that time I went inside the TARDIS. Hello and welcome to another video, and another slightly different one this week. I want to talk to you about that time that I went inside the TARDIS. Now, as I'm sure you're all aware, I live a thoroughly action-packed lifestyle full of adventure and excitement and really wild things. Yeah, I know you can hardly hear me through your tears of laughter. I'm not big on, going to Doctor Who conventions and that sort of thing. And let's face it, you don't get an awful lot in Australia to begin with. Certainly not in most of the areas where I've lived. Now, I do vaguely recall one time when I was in the UK. I think it was 1990. There was a signing at Sheffield Space Centre. I think Colin Baker and Sophie Aldred and Nicola Bryant were there. I didn't go. I didn't go. And when we moved to Australia, we moved to Adelaide. Adelaide is notorious, or it was then in the 90s. I think it's gotten better now since I've left, of course. Basically never getting anything. You'll have major pop stars doing a tour of Australia, and 9 times out of 10 they'd never go to Adelaide. And the same was true of Doctor Who related events and conventions and things like that. They just did not go to Adelaide, which made it something of a surprise when one such Doctor Who event actually did go to Adelaide in 2005. Now, the event was called Inside the TARDIS, and it wasn't a convention as such. It was a sort of a live stage show. First half was kind of scripted, and the second half was taking questions from the audience. And in attendance were the 6th Doctor, Colin Baker, the 7th Doctor, Sylvester McCoy, and Katie Manning, who of course was Jo Grant in the Jon Pertwee era of Doctor Who. And it was hosted by Australian comic and Doctor Who fan Tim Ferguson. Now, as you can cast your mind back to those days of 2005, that was of course the year that Doctor Who came back. So it was kind of a big deal, 2005, and it was certainly a big deal for something like that to actually come to Adelaide. And it was at the Adelaide Festival Theatre. And I decided, well, I've been moaning about the fact that there's bugger all in this, bugger all like this ever comes to Adelaide for the last 14 years, so I'm definitely going. And I think it was one event, that's just one show in Adelaide, and it was held on July the 23rd. Which, ironically enough, July the 23rd is actually the date back in 1991 that I emigrated from England. Maybe that means July 23 is some kind of nexus point in the space-time continuum. On the other hand, it could just be a massive coincidence. But yeah, I can't remember how much it cost, but I was determined that I was going to go. Even though, I lived in the southern suburbs of Adelaide, and that meant you had to catch a train, and it was like a 45-minute train journey into the city, and then a 45-minute train journey back out of the city. But, like I said, there was no way I was going to miss this. Something Doctor Who related, something actually interesting, coming to Adelaide for the first time in all the time that I'd been there. So I was going, and I went, and it was a fun show. Honestly, it's so long ago now. It's nearly 17 years. Good God, that's depressing. I don't really remember that much. I remember Tim Ferguson making some cracks about Cardiff. The only real kind of story that I remember from Colin or Sylvester or Katie was Sylvester telling the infamous Remembrance of the Daleks story about the explosion bringing forth the fire brigade and the firemen proceeding, thinking they were in some kind of terrorist attack, and the cloud of smoke, and then emerging from the smoke is a Dalek. I'm sure he was exaggerating it for comic effect, but it was very funny. And I'd heard the story before, but it was still very funny the way that Sylvester told it. Um, Now, I didn't buy the program. After the show, there was actually an opportunity for autographs, to stick around and autograph and I guess meet, them. And unfortunately, I didn't. Now, I didn't for a number of reasons. One was I didn't have anything for them to sign. There was stuff that you could buy, like photos and that, which were really expensive, and I didn't have any money. I mean, I was a struggling student at the time, which is, code for saying I had no freaking money. And was pretty cheap anyway. And I think there was another reason that I didn't stick around. I wasn't entirely sure when they were coming back, because they were having a break before they came back to do that. Wasn't entirely sure when it was, and it's like, I think it was like 5:30 or 5:45 or something, and I had to go and catch a train because there was literally only one train every hour from Adelaide back to the southern suburbs. So if I missed the 6 o'clock one by even 2 minutes, that was me going to be sitting in Adelaide train station for another freaking hour waiting for another train. And of course, another reason why I didn't want to do that, Doctor Who was on that night. Back in the days when New Who was actually exciting and not eye-rolling. And actually that night, that actual night, was the first broadcast of part 1 of The Empty Child. So, I mean, yeah, I think I made the right choice there. Although, you do kind of think it's a little bit sad, because that's probably the only opportunity I will ever get to meet Colin and Sylvester and Katie. Though I did see them live in person on stage, so I think that counts. I'm counting it anyway. I mean, what are you going to say to them anyway? Not a lot, really. I don't know. I would never know what to say to a celebrity to begin with. It's just kind of an awkward social situation, and I'm awkward at the best of times, so not good. But yeah, that was my experience inside the TARDIS. The only other remotely related event that I've ever been to was, I think it was the very first Adelaide Comic Con, sometime in the early 2010s. I'm not sure whether it was 2010, 2011, or early 2012. It wasn't later than then, because obviously I moved to Queensland in late 2012. I don't think there was anything really specifically Doctor Who related at that event. Jonathan Frakes was there, and I saw a bit of his panel. It was okay, not really particularly thrilling. I remember just thinking, man, he looks freaking old. I don't think there was anything specifically related to Doctor Who there, except the opportunity to buy lots of really, really overpriced merchandise, which, even though I was working by then, I still couldn't really afford anyway. And you could probably get them cheaper off eBay, so why bother? But that is really the one and only kind of Doctor Who related proper event that I've ever been to. I wish I could remember more of it, but I do remember that it was a really good time. It was a really good show, and it was really enjoyable, and the audience were all really into it and having a good laugh. And Tim Ferguson was a good host, who clearly knew what he was talking about as well, And it was just really nice to see Colin and Sylvester and Katie live and in person, and to actually get to go to something like that for the first and probably only time that I ever will. Anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed this little trip down memory lane. I was reminded of this last week when I was doing that 2000s nostalgia video, and I almost put it into that, and I thought, you know what? No, I think this could actually make a story for a video of its own that's more Doctor Who related than most of that video was. Anyway, thanks for listening. I will talk to you again next week.